Alright guys, Bill, I'm here back with more Tsushima. I just realized I completely forgot that last time I was recording I was listening to podcasts, so might as well do that here too, because I don't give a shit about this fucking game. No, we're still not out of the thing. Come on. Well, it's really gonna force me to do this? Alright, there we go. Or not? There we go. Goes from the past. So that's the final quest in this batch here.
And today we're here to talk about Nicole Anthony and her potato salad recipe.
Ah, fuck.
With me today is Matt. How you doing, Matt?
I am good. I'm very excited to talk about Nicole. A very obvious standout from the last season of Big Brother.
Yeah, how many more of these are there?
It was a rough season in many aspects. But
Yeah, I've listened to a decent amount of them now. Like, is this... I know there's at least one more because one came out today. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's only 6, so there's still one more after this. Goddamn. Who's left that hasn't been talked about? They talked about Janelle, they talked about Kaser, talked about Danielle Donato. Talked about Memphis is in this one. Talked about Keisha. Talked about Enzo's in the next one I saw. Kevin Campbell? Is Kevin Campbell in these? I think Kevin Campbell's not in one of these yet.
And so that really just my interest in people is what got me into reality television. And I just remember I got into Big Brother when Rachel Riley was my big introduction to Big Brother.
Yeah, no, so Kevin Campbell's one of them. Enzo's in the next one. Ian has already been talked about. Cody Calafiore's already been talked about. Nicole Franzel, Devon. What am I missing? Christmas? I think it's Christmas, isn't it? It's Kevin Campbell and Christmas. That's kind of a weird fucking final one.
Maybe, no promises.
I think we all need some therapy sometimes watching this show.
Yeah.
Be a nice perspective to add into the mix. We do our best to analyze what they're doing and from a Big Brother fan perspective. But I feel like that is the perspective you bring us is probably unique to what at least what we've all been bringing, and that's the point of finding new voices, right? So I'm excited to have you here, Christian, and everybody else. It's been cool.
Yeah, excited to be here.
All right. So we're here to talk about Nicole Anthony and get a sense of where she's
It's
at.
pretty far still, right?
What are we looking at with Nicole Anthony heading into season 20?
Yeah, I don't feel great about Nicole Anthony as of right now. Not because I think she's going to do poorly necessarily, but just because I can't see her winning.
Nicole Anthony is probably the one that most people are familiar with because she came from the most recent season. So even if you haven't seen past seasons, you've probably seen Nicole. But I do think that it's hard to pin down her game and really like what her story really was that season. So I'm interested to talk about what we expect from her heading into the following season. When we were previewing the Big Brother 21 cast, Nicole was the one who talked about locking her parents in the basement and unicorns and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I believe she went last in our draft. And that people were not particularly very high on Nicole.
Yeah, and now I have to go look and see where I had her in my rankings. But yeah, people were not that high on her. I want to say that I felt probably a little good about her going in. Not the best, not the worst kind of thing. She didn't seem like she was going to flop or anything like that. But I think, she, like the quirky nature of it all, like you never really know if you can put full trust into that person to be, the best person to put your money on for, winning the season. And when it comes to this season as well, I feel pretty similarly. I think that she's going to be in that house with potentially, hypothetically, a lot of other really big players and people who are.
Shit.
If Big Brother 21 had
Fuck it.
one or two people that were really controlling the action here and there, obviously there was that big group and all. Jackson kind of really ahead of a lot of things there. This group is going to have, a bunch of different personalities all over the place. And I agree. I'm not quite sure how she's going to fare. I think I'm optimistic towards her, but I think I could easily see, especially being that one person, coming off of being the fan favorite coming into the house, there could be people that want to just swipe her right off the board and kind of never look back, or she can mix in well. It's a hard to say with her.
I feel similarly in that when she came into the Big Brother house, she was very just intimidated by all of the big personalities. And I mean, there were a lot of big personalities last season, but I feel like it's been exponentially bigger in an All-Star season. And so I just could see her getting very overwhelmed very quickly in the early part of the game.
Yeah, she was an interesting player at the start of the game because, she was pretty instrumental in helping in helping influence Christy away from certain decisions. She had decent relationships
I forgot about
with
that.
a lot of the people. She just wasn't
Yeah,
included in any of the solid alliances. She tried to make some of her own, or at least be a part of some of her own. We had the Black Widows, which was technically a thing for a period of time. She was making relationships with people like Ovi and Cliff and Kemi, and she was trying to play a different game than she ended up playing. The problem was that she ultimately failed at getting something going. So she kind of had to revert to this very underdog style of play to break up the big alliance kind of play. But and I think that's what people remember her for. But I think it's underreported that she did try to play a different game at the start of Big Brother 21.
Yeah, she definitely was obviously on the outs. We know that whole everything, how that went down with the Grateful or the Nine, Undeniable, whatever it was, and obviously that half of them were on the outs. I think she was. I don't know if you said this or if I'm agreeing with my own thought. She was kind of forced to be in an underdog position, as she was on the outs. There was nothing else she could do, and especially as she had some bonds that she was starting to make. It seemed like she was kind of okay with Nick and Bella, especially with the Black Widow thing, but then all of a sudden when that shifted and everything kind of got flipped on its head and everybody completely turned against her in that one, memorable scene with the HOH room, everything just kind of went south, and it took a while for her to really, feel comfortable in the game again and get her footing where, eventually, of course, we're going to see Grateful start to turn on each other, especially as the jury starts, and especially, the Jessica HOH helped out with that, but it did take a while before she was able to really, start feeling like she could do something in the game again.
Yeah, and I think, going off of that, she was really good at damage control throughout the game, and when people would rat her out, she was really good at backpedaling out of it. I'm just curious as to how that backpedaling holds up, because it's one thing to backpedal against Sis or Bella, it's a different thing to backpedal against somebody who's played the game for many seasons and is considered to be an all-star pro game.
Yeah, well, let's explore this HOH room moment, because that was really the big defining moment of the game. That she essentially was able to learn that there was a big alliance going on that she was not a part of, and that something needed to happen to break it up. And she had developed relationships on both ends of the alliance with Holly, and Holly was telling her things about Nick and Bella. She developed a relationship with Nick and Bella, who were telling her things about Holly and Kat. She had this information and she was trying to play them off of each other. And when Nick had the HOH, she essentially made a last-minute Hail Mary before the nominations and told Nick, hey, those guys, Jack, them, they wanted you gone this week, which was the truth. She found out this information. It was true. And she was trying to get Nick to do something about it, which he should have. But it backfires because Nick does not feel like he has enough time to figure this out, and does not go through with
Is it down or is it up?
After the nominations, when nothing can be done, is now asking Tommy and them about was this true? And of course they deny it, and Nick eats it up. It very quickly becomes a story of, oh, so it's Nicole. Nicole is making things up. She's trying to play us off of each other. She's the Vanessa Russo. She's the devil. And everybody gets worked up in the HOH room. And, the scene plays
us all wrapped around her finger. That wasn't really happening. She was playing the game, but yeah, that narrative really took
Poorly.
Yeah, and to Christian's point, what she had to do damage control here, her game was destroyed. She gets put up on the block as a replacement after the veto is won, and technically is one of very few people to survive a backdoor when she survives the week. And I will say, that is in part due to the damage control that she did, even though she wasn't even aware that she was going to be saved. But she had to do so much of this. She had to convince everyone that, like, no, I wasn't making anything up. I wasn't doing this on purpose. I was just put in a weird situation, and it's really somebody else's fault. And she pretty much succeeds, Christian.
Yeah, and I mean, that just speaks, like, she may not have been in this huge alliance, but she was always good one-on-one with a lot of people. And so she was able to, like, plant those seeds and have those roots for when those moments where she really needed to backpedal off of what was being, accused of her. Even though it was true, she was still able to kind of backpedal off of it and take the light off of her a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah, I think those relationships that she had built, I always felt like a lot of it had to do with the fact that some of the key relationships in there were from people at first Nick, Christy, Tommy, that she had kind of been friendly with, and that was all really felt like regional thing, like the New York aspect of it all. Nick was from New Jersey, Christy and Tommy obviously from New York, with Nicole from Long Island. So I always felt like there was some kind of people, you see somebody on the show with you that is from your home area, you kind of bond with them, and just that connection that kind of brought her closer to Christy early on, that kept Christy wanting to keep her around, when I don't know if it's specifically because of the location thing, but just it helped, kind of create the bond with them that otherwise I don't know if Nicole gets out of that week alive. I don't know if people are going to like her enough, or if they're willing enough to work with her to the point where after she gets exposed for all the horrible things she does, I know that she did a great job in, trying to recover from there, but it does seem like she's a bigger threat going forward than Cliff was, who ultimately went home. So, credit to her for that week, and also, just the weeks prior, like Christian said, just building relationships. It was all good work that got her past that.
Yeah, and she definitely was helped by, Cliff Notes exposed.
That too.
But after Cliff leaves, she and then immediately returns, she's able to develop a much better relationship. I mean, she had a good relationship with Cliff prior to that as well. Her and Ovi and Cliff formed the Fellowship of the Zing Alliance, which was
her favorite alliance.
Yeah, doomed from the start, but ultimately did pretty well. And then Cliff is going to win the following HOH, and then the story continues from there. And really, Cliff, I think, picks up from where Nicole left off in terms of playing this group against each other. And Nicole, from this point forward, is a lot more gun-shy in this season. She is afraid to make moves, afraid to speak too much, and really starts to take a back seat in the game. And this is, I think, what a lot of people remember her for if they're being critical of her game. In this section of time where she's really not as involved, not as active a player as she was before. And we see a lot of this, and I don't know if she ever fully recovers from this, and it makes me wonder how much of this HOH moment where things just went so wrong so fast, how much of that is still in her, and is she going to come into season 22 feeling scared to make moves still?
Yeah, I'm well aware.
Psychologically being ostracized by that many people in the house, and then have to sit downstairs and listen to them, banter and scream and just all the things. I can only imagine how mortifying that is. I mean, I think she made the right move in being gun shy. I think she didn't really have any other option, otherwise I just would have screwed right back on her. But I do think, right, that she, like you said, she sat on it too long. She was shy too long, and she never really got her footing again. And from this point, in my eyes, it was like, it really became Cliff's game, and Nicole was
Coming on back to that season's I think it would probably be helpful to have this be so close. I'm sure there's something that's just that we can talk about her. Maybe I'm not thinking of, but she has everything that happened to her so fresh in her brain. It only happened last summer, and it was not too long ago. She's had the past year to sit on it, reflect on it, just like everybody else that plays this game does, but her especially because she hasn't dropped the show once since then. She's been podcasting, talking to other Big Brother players, on her show that she's been doing since then. It has been nonstop since she got off the show that she's had Big Brother on the mind, and I'm sure,
Oh, are we supposed to follow
that's
her?
for a lot of people.
Shit, I wasn't
She's
paying
been
attention.
outwardly talking about it, talking through this and that with a bunch of other players, some that are on this season. So I feel like her brain has to be well set, like she has to be ready to go for this season with a good game plan in mind, and the ability to correct a lot of mistakes that she might have made, things that happened to her, learn from stories that she's been getting from other past players. So I think she could be set up very well just based on the ability that she has. Janelle, I guess, the entire thing. Anybody else that for it, of course, we don't. So, yeah, so.
I mean, I agree, but I also worry, you fall off your bike, and then you think about, okay, this is what I'm gonna do the next time I get on my bike, and I'm planning it out, I've got everything prepared.
Yeah, I never thought about that. Is Howie the only person ever? Yeah, I think Howie's the only person in the history of Big Brother to play back-to-back and do worse on their second time. Because a lot of people tied, like what James tied, Kaser tied, Janelle tied, Paul tied, Devon did better, James did better. Yeah, so I think Jesse did better. So yeah, I think Howie's the only person in the history of the show to play back-to-back and do worse.
In more or less a similar situation as she was last time.
I'm not bad about that.
But if she goes in and she's like, hey, I'm just going to try and get rid of that impression of me, and I'm going to play entirely differently. She's opening this whole new window for a game style that she never really got to before.
So, we know that toward the end of season 21, after, again, Flip really taking the driver's seat for a little while, she gets into a situation where, there are a few different pairs. She wins that double eviction. It's a big, big moment. She gets Christy out. We head into the final five, and this is where all hell breaks loose, where she wants to go back on the deal and get rid of Holly. So Jackson has won the HOH. He put up Cliff and Tommy. Nicole wins the veto. She knows that she's going to use it on Cliff, which means Jackson is forced to put Holly on the block. So they have to choose between Holly and Tommy. Nicole and Cliff essentially control the votes, and they just have to decide who they want to evict. And this is when Nicole starts to, where we see, okay, now she's ready to make the move. This is the Nicole that we saw in the early days of the season. She's ready to do this thing. She's like, hey, where I'm from, you shake someone's hand and you stab them in the back. And I think that's what we have to do here. But, unfortunately, after a bunch of, Jackson makes up some lies, we see this big blow up with Jackson and Tommy. She ultimately is going to kind of let Cliff make the call, and let Tommy go. And now, I think that there's a lot to be said about whether this was the right move. We talked a lot about it at the time. I think it was very hard to say one way or the other. And if you think about it, I actually feel like Tommy leaving was better for Nicole because it did give her an out to win sitting next to Holly. And that's better for her. I'm not sure what happens if she sits next to Jackson. Or certainly I think if she sits next to Tommy, she might lose. And certainly Cliff, it felt she probably would have lost again. So keeping Holly in the game actually probably was better for her, but that was not really the line of reasoning at the time. In what she was thinking, it was just like, I can see both sides, and she just kind of let Cliff take over the negotiation. Nicole.
Where is this?
Which again I feel like harkens back to you know, that gun shyness that she was there. She was getting on the bike, and then she was like, okay, fine, Cliff, you can do it.
Yeah, that final dive took years off my life. Watching that entire week play out, a stressful time, especially like not even a player in the game. You're just, and my position at the time, which I can't really put my head fully back in at the moment to remember if I, can change my position on it. But at the time, I was fully, you have to evict Holly here. There's no way around it.
I was
Like many people,
pretty sure I always said that. Oh, fuck off.
keeping Tommy in the game is one.
Wait, how'd I die? I had a whole bunch of resolve.
You're keeping it a pair right now.
That fucking matters.
Much more
Still.
well suited for at least the part 1 and part 2 of that HOH comp to potentially beat you guys and then take themselves to the end, which you knew that they were going to do. They were never, whatever. Again, we don't have to rehash all that, even though it's already happening in my head. But it was really hard to watch that because I think for a majority of that time, Nicole knew what she thought was the better move. She thought taking out Holly was the way to go, and I think Cliff was also there a little bit, but then Cliff was always more so kind of leaning towards Jackson and Holly, it felt like to me. And then as the week went on, and they just kind of, were bouncing back and forth a million times, and they landed on evicting Tommy there, especially after that blow-up. It was just so tough to watch, how that all play out. I mean, it was like, I guess, somewhat entertaining TV, at that big Final 5 blow-up, but, as people that were rooting for Nicole and really hard in on that position of you need to evict Holly here, that was stressful. She didn't.
Yeah, very similarly, I was like, you have to evict Holly. But I was also rooting for Tommy at that point, so it's like very hard to get back in the mindset of where I was. But I feel similarly that she did the same thing with Cliff before when Cliff and Christy were in debates of how she was going to use her superpower, and she was like, I would personally tell Cliff to make a deal with Christy and then back out of it after she uses it to nominate whoever he wanted for the replacement nominee. But she was like, but that's Cliff, that's my ally, he can do whatever he wants. And she she put Cliff back in the driver's seat. And even in her post-game interview, she was like, at the end, if I could have taken Cliff, I would have, even if I thought I would have lost him, because I'd rather lose to him than win against somebody else. And I think that's just a questionable mindset to have, especially going into an All-Stars game. I think it needs to be a little bit
That should just be done already. I really don't give a shit. Come on.
At the end of Nicole's story, she did come kind of close to winning this game. All she needed to do was win that final HOH. There have been plenty of Big Brother winners in the exact same spot. They won because they won that final HOH, and they wouldn't have won otherwise. But she did not win it, and not really for lack of ability to either. She was perfectly capable in competitions, and had these been the regular, kind of like the more normal, final 3 competitions, she probably would have won, or at least come closer to winning. But the competitions have become more physical over time, and she basically had no chance against Holly and Jackson, and so she is going to lose here in 3rd place. But again, it should not be understated that, despite the flaws in her game, she comes very, very close to winning season 21 of Big Brother, and could be coming back as a fan favorite winner this season if the competition layout had been similar to how it was even just 3 seasons ago.
And we have 2 Nicole winners there, and that makes things already worse for these theories of Nicole's going to want the other Nicole out, friends will want Anthony out. So I hope that's not the case, and maybe the fact that she didn't win will help out with that. But, I mean, look, a lot of people, you go into Big Brother, all 16 of these people that go into the house are going to be people that want to win. But Nicole, for some reason, always felt like a little bit more. When she got out of that, or a little bit different, I should say, when she got out of that house, and you watch back the interviews of her talking to anybody on the red carpet or in the backyard. You guys included Taryn and Rob were back there, and she was just like the level of excitement within her for the fact that she realized, she won fan favorite, and hearing from everybody, you are so loved because you were true to yourself on a season where so many people were bad doing this and that, and you were the one person who people were able to get behind and root for and relate to and all this kind of stuff. And you can tell how much that meant to her and still means to her this day, I'm sure. So You know, Big Brother gives, and all these reality shows, they give everybody certain different things. So while I'm sure she would have loved to get the win, I think she really got out of that experience what she, you know, something that she really took away from it. And coming into this one, less so than a lot of other players, do I feel like she thinks she has something to prove. I feel like, tell me if you guys disagree, I feel like she's going into this looking forward to another fun summer and probably, you know, trying to win, but I don't think she's going to be one of those people in there with, like, I have to win and prove myself.
Yeah, I feel very similarly, and I think, like, if there's anything that she might have gained from last summer and being America's favorite, it's that just all of that anxiety that she had while she was in the house about how she was being perceived, and if she was on the wrong side of things, I feel like it just helps to soothe that a little bit and let her go into the house a little bit more confidently and maybe give her a little bit more space in her head to make bigger moves or to do more risky things.
I don't even know if I want to waste the resolve.
Yeah, Nicole comes out of season 21, fan favorite. She's loved. She was definitely overwhelmed at first, but I think, you know, she's, I imagine it's like,
Alright, wait. So I'm moving around.
Where does she stand
I'm
now?
so bored right now.
I don't mean to imply anything about Nicole specifically, but there have been a lot of people who have left fan favorites and come back, and it's all gone wrong for them. I don't think that's Nicole. I think that Nicole is genuinely who she is, and I feel like she'll come back. She's always going to be Nicole. But it's something that we should talk about. Is there a chance, like, that either she comes in worried that that's going to happen? You know, you can be loved all you want. If you're somebody with insecurities, it's always going to be in the back of your mind, like, yeah, they like me now, but it's just because they haven't seen X. Or will we see Nicole playing a different game and see a different reaction to Nicole? Where are we at in terms of stock on Nicole and the fandom?
I feel, I mean, it really just depends on, like, where her anxiety is at right now. I think, I mean, especially if, I don't know how late she could have been on Twitter up until this point if she's in the house, but there's been, she's a very hot debate on Twitter, and people really like to root for her or really like to tear her down in terms of wanting to see her on this season. And so it just depends on how far she's been into that and see where she feels like America feels on her. Because if she's coming off of feeling like she's America's favorite, I feel like she goes in there pretty confidently with the least amount of anxiety. Of course, as you were saying, like, the anxiety still exists, and I think Big Brother is a game that, like, purposely feeds on a lot of anxiety and anxious pathways in your brain. But I think that's the best case scenario. But if she's, you know, been pretty deep into social media and Twitter and people and her being a controversial person to be brought onto this season, I think, I mean, she's going to be right back in kind of her shell right at the, like, the undeniable incident, kind of gun-shy and afraid.
Matt, is there any chance, do we need to be worried that Nicole goes on to Big Brother 22 and she becomes a we're the good people person?
No, I really, maybe it's wishful thinking. I don't think so. I really don't think so. I think she had the narrative all right in her head back when she was, you know, last season. She never did something like, nothing that she was saying that people found to be endearing about her or relatable about her ever felt like she was putting on those cameras. Like, she was always being so true to herself, and I feel like that's not something that I can see changing. I really don't think that that's her. And I really hope to be proved wrong. I don't think so. I think, look, I mean, there's a difference between, you know, social media and real life, to say the least. Her social media in the past 10 months has turned into like a kindergarten playground with flowers and unicorns and rainbows and butterflies. And that has kind of been, you know, a little off-putting to some people because, yeah, well, that's the character of Nicole that, you know, she's created and she's turned into this podcast that she's been doing, and it's just kind of her branding at this point. You know, she's going into the house not with any of that. You know, there's not going to be a floating unicorn over her head the entire time she's in there.
You never know.
She's going to have like, she might have a she might have like a T-shirt with like all of these different things on it.
Haven't they been available?
Beyond her, yeah.
I'm recommending Blood. I believe that's the penultimate mission, right? Of the chapter.
Her, specifically Nicole Anthony, being somebody that can really change a whole lot from what we saw her as. I think we'll be okay with her.
Okay. Alternatively, is she so, like, she's now, you know, she's the nice person, she's the genuine person. Does she come into this season now a little bit afraid of changing that perception of her? Is she going to be a little bit worried about being too cutthroat on the season, lest it, you know, tarnish that image?
Well, can you imagine Nicole in a majority alliance? How does that go? What does she do? I don't know. We've never seen it, and I don't know a clue what it would be like, because that's the kind of thing. Say she does get into a majority alliance, and now she's in the undeniable, hopefully a lot less gross and hateful than
Next
the
episode,
previous one.
I'm going to continue on.
Then
Oh,
there's people on
thanks
the
for watching.
outs, and then she starts to feel bad.